Okay, so, Mr. Atkins, who do you have? Do you have Officer Fikes outside?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. Any further issues before I go ahead and call in Officer Fikes and our jurors?
Your Honor, one matter I wanted to discuss. Defense counsel, Mr. Adams, was kind enough to share with the state some body cam that possibly defense could introduce related to the 2018 stop. Per the court's guidance, the state's direct of Officer Fikes is not going to address or discuss anything related to that. It's going to specifically be about what we discussed yesterday. The state, I imagine that the defense counsel with those addressing a stop that we are not getting into, that neither side will inquire of Officer Fikes about something that we are precluded from introducing.
Does Officer Fikes know that?
He knows that I'm not going to be asking him anything related to that stop.
The 18 stop?
Correct, Your Honor. At this time.
All right. You done, Mr. Atkins?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. Mr. Adams?
Thank you, Judge. Thank you. I think we need to be clear that the issue that we discussed yesterday has to do with evidence, specifically contraband that was found in the back of the Charger, the second vehicle. We did not say that testimony in regards to the 2018 stop itself was improper, was inappropriate in 2018. And they had Officer Gant here yesterday. Officer Gant is the person who performed the stop in 2018 on Mr. Williams's car. And it was opposition that's fair game, that's fine. He was charged with speeding in that regard. But what the court specifically dealt with was whether or not the guns, the money, and the marijuana that were found in the second car was admissible evidence, was anything we could get into. And then the court indicated that absent a further showing of some nexus connection by the state, that we couldn't get into that. Now,
so what is it you want to get into, Mr. Atkins?
Well, I'm just saying that I want to make sure we're not improperly narrowing the scope of our inquiry. Officer Fikes was involved in that second stop. Officer Fikes had some conversation with Officer Gant. I will be candid with the court. What I've shared with the prosecutors is something that arose in the hearing with Gant previously, which is there's a period of time where Officer Fikes goes up to Officer Gant and specifically tells him to mute his body cam.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's like a minute long. He says, "Are you on or are you hot?"
Yeah.
The officer. Anyway, that to us goes to the credibility of Officer Fikes and doesn't have anything to do with the contraband. There's another portion of the video where Officer Fikes says to Officer Gant, where he goes to Officer Gant, and Officer Gant, they're talking about the fact that Mr. Williams is going to be charged with speeding. And Officer Fikes tries to get Officer Gant to up the charges to reckless driving. He says, if you charge him with reckless driving, we can go in the car. And so to us, that goes to the credibility of Officer Fikes because the evidence is an officer attempting to...
I don't have any disagreement understanding those two. Right. So anything else?
No, because I don't think that opens the door to anything.
Well, I was just about to say that. Now, all of you are very skilled examiners, but even the best of us tend to inadvertently do things we're not supposed to. But I'm just going to tell you, with that caution, if you get into or open the door as to anything else by your examination, I may change my ruling. Okay?
I understand.
All right. So that's just the caveat that in the most dangerous game. Okay?
No, I understand.
Okay, all right.
And I'm being very candid with the court and
I appreciate
them
that.
In terms of what I intend to get into, and that specifically doesn't go to anything regarding the contraband in car number 2.
Okay.
All right.
Your Honor, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Officer Fikes, in Officer Fikes' testimony, Officer Gant informed Officer Fikes to specifically, his first interaction, like if Officer Fikes is asked a question about 2018, his first interaction was literally walking up to that Charger and seeing the firearms. And so the state's position is that if Officer Fikes threading the Officer Fike's involvement was overwhelmingly involved with that Dodge Charger. That's why Officer Gant took the warrants out and handled primarily the Porsche. Officer Fike's initial encounter was approaching the car and seeing these firearms, and that all is kind of part and parcel of Officer Fike's involvement. So the state is intentionally not trying to get anywhere close to opening or asking Fikes any questions about the 2018 to not run afoul of this court's guidance on that. And the state doesn't feel that if on cross-examination he's asked questions about this stop, that there's any way to discuss that without, on state's redirect, the fact and circumstance of how Fikes is involved, who he interacted with, what he saw. Because if you just take in a vacuum a statement he made, it's relevant. Why is he on scene? What did he do? And his primary role was being quite alarmed when he saw a weapon in that vehicle. And so his whole interaction, everything he does with that stop is wrapped into the Charger. So the state just wanted to be clear with the court that I cannot envision questioning on Officer Fikes about a stop when he can't discuss the majority of his involvement and how he even got to that location, which was specifically to help Gant, because Gant was going to pull over the Porsche, and Officer Fikes' initial role was he needed help because there was two cars in tandem. And so Officer Fikes he's going to testify truthfully about what he did. He's going to talk about the Charger. And so the state feels that either the 2018 stop should not be discussed or it all should come in. Because there is not, with the way that the facts and evidence are in this case and his involvement, there is not a way, and the rule of completeness, because if they're talking to him about something he did 30, 40 minutes into the stop, the jury is going to have no awareness, and it's fair to complete the story so the jury's not misinformed of how did Fikes even get to this scene? Why is he even here? Why is he talking to Officer Gant? How did he even get here? And he's talking to Officer Gant after he goes to the Charger. And their analysis or investigative steps, or if the defense was crossing him about what they just referenced, the way he's thinking about things is all under the lens of just witnessing these firearms in a car. And he mentions the driver's foot was fidgety. And so it's all wrapped together in why he's coming to Gant, his whole viewpoint of the stop. And so the state just wanted to be clear with the court to make sure that the court's guidance, because the state doesn't feel that there is a universe where the door won't be opened. And the state feels that if Officer Fikes is questioned about the 2018 stop, then the state, to have the jury see a full picture of why Fikes is there, would be able to talk about everything he saw and did with that car, which goes into what we talked about yesterday, Your Honor.
Are you still not going to try and introduce the guns, right?
Your Honor, at this current time, the state was not intending to introduce anything with 2018 per your guidance. Okay. If Fikes discussed what he did, the state did have, and before the court's ruling yesterday, it's Exhibit X-ray. We had 5 photographs pertaining to the firearms, that the money and the marijuana that Officer Fikes and Officer Gant handled with that case. So the state would feel that if we're going to talk about it, if the door is opened, we would intend to introduce the photographs of those firearms. That is what Officer Fikes is testifying about and what he saw and witnessed.
Your Honor, the specific 2 things that I mentioned to the court have nothing to do with the contraband in the second vehicle.
Well, they do have. Address this for me. He's got to be able to tell why it is it completes the picture in terms of why he was involved. He saw the weapons.
Now he's talking about Jeffery Williams' car, and he's trying to get the officer Gant to upgrade Jeffery Williams' charges so they can search Jeffery Williams.
That's a totally separate issue, and I agree that goes to bias. Separate issue. But the state's trying to tell me, or the state's trying to just have me rule upon, is whether or not they get to complete the picture as to why Fikes is there to begin with.
Well, that's...
Oh, shit, he's gonna bend the block on me, yo.
Gant makes a stop. Gant makes a request for additional officers to get to the location. Not just Fikes. A lot of other officers arrive at the location. And they're conducting their investigation. Gant is conducting the investigation because of the speeding ticket from Mr. Williams. The problem shows obvious credibility in bias. The jury can make that determination, but that doesn't open the door to allow them to talk about the second car. We're not talking about it. We're talking about the second car or contraband that's found in the second car that has no connection or nexus to Mr. Williams.
Okay.
Your Honor,
I still agree, Mr. Atkins. I still agree that it's not relevant.
Your Honor, you agree with the state's position?
No, I agree with the defense's position.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Sure.
OCGA 24-8-822, and I'm going to prevents litigants from
24-8 dash what?
24-8-822, Your Honor, prevents litigants from misleading the jury by presenting portions of prior statements taken out of context, and it is often essential in order to arrive at the true drift, intent, and meaning of what was said on the previous occasion. And the reason that's so salient, Your Honor, is that it's not just Officer Fikes being there, it's Officer Fikes, the information when he approaches Officer Gant is part and parcel of the firearm. So if he's crossed about, yes, Your Honor.
We covered this yesterday. It doesn't have a nexus. Stop trying to get into it. I'm still not convinced. So, he shouldn't testify about why he was there. It's not relevant at this point in time. Because what it does is invites and opens the doors to the weapons. So you're not gonna do that. At this time.
Yes, Your Honor. And
What they're trying to assert is they're examining just on bias. That's it. On the 18 stop. I don't see another reason at this point in time. I still have to, I understand what 24-8-822 does, 822 does, but I'm still not convinced.
understood, Your Honor. After cross-examination, the state will, depending on how the testimony comes out, approach Your Honor before asking any questions related to that. If the state feels that the door has been opened.
Well, I'll be listening.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, is Officer Fikes here?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's go ahead and recall him, please. Summon our jurors for us, please, Sergeant Ingram. Did we excuse him temporarily yesterday? Yeah, probably need to re-swear him. Probably need to re-swear him, so. You got a lash in it or something? Oh.
Can you pass my application?
You rose. Anything else, sir? Ms. Sharp?
Yes,
Was there anything else other than those two things?
I believe so, Your Honor.
Okay.
I view them as three issues. Well, two if we exclude Mr. Steele's issues involving his client alone. We still have the issue, in my mind, of the repeatedly calling. And
That's related to the first two.
Okay, yes, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. Okay, Sergeant Ingram, if you could summon our jurors for us, please. Thank you, sir. before we do that, Mr. Adams and representative from the state, can you come up for a second? All right, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
Hey, Alexa,
Okay.
first plug.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let me tell you where we are at this point in time. We have a little more work that we need to do, and it doesn't require you sitting in your headquarters waiting on us, okay?
Alexa,
And given the length
off first
and the
plug.
hour of the day, it's 4 o'clock, we'll just take up that business and
Alexa,
send you home, okay,
turn on
for the
first plug.
evening. So, unless you just want to stay here till late in the evening, what do you say? Okay, apparently not. Okay, all right. Just want to make sure, you know. All right, okay. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, if you could be here tomorrow for 9 o'clock for an anticipated 9:30 start time, our goal is to work till the end of the day, much like we did today, between sometime 4 and 5 o'clock, okay? So that's what we're going to do. Do tomorrow. Friday, ladies and gentlemen, we are still planning on you basically taking the day on that day. Okay, this coming Friday. All right. Okay. Now, related to Fridays, it was not the court's intention to cause one or a couple of you consternation for the 9th of February. That's next Friday. Okay. We are going to take an administrative day on that day to permit several of you to have some to be seen and otherwise meet obligations that were pre-existing. Okay, so the 9th will not be an issue. So for planning purposes for you all, so this Friday and basically next Friday, you will have you will have the day. Okay, all right. What other ministerial inquiry of me do you have, ladies and gentlemen? Of me. if any? It's 2 days too early. I'm going to talk for a few more minutes. You'll have something. Okay. What's that? No objection? Okay. Well, I appreciate you. Look at y'all learning stuff all the time. All right. In the four walls of this courtroom. Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, unless you have anything of us or of me, what I'll do is I'll release you and excuse you for the evening with your customary ad nauseum admonitions. Remember not to speak to anybody about this case. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Do not have anybody discuss it within your presence and hearing, and certainly avoid any news media stories or any other print media about this particular case.